one of the cheapest ways to get out, especially when you're hiring a part-time employee to do a temporary job for a month or so, 2 months or so. And God forbid if they turn out to be the greatest person in the world, and we need them for something else that can do better. And thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else involved?
Yes, if we're going to stop paying volunteers, I'd like to get my name on the list. It's been a tradition in this town not to pay volunteers, and I think if you set that precedent, you're going to have to pay a lot more people than the person you're talking about paying.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment today?
Real quick, I forgot what ago, Jerry mentioned it. I talked with DOT and the company that got the contract for Beck Luton's project up at the school. And they'll start construction tomorrow. They moved their equipment in today, I loaded their pipes, so they'll start that. And then next week, our part of the agreement is to go from what they complete to the ditch with our drainage pipe, which has already been purchased, and we've been waiting for them to start the construction. So that will be next week.
As a taxpayer, I hope that you all, and you already have shown that, will just take it as a priority to get our fiscal house in order. At the last meeting, Jerry said we weren't even sure what our current fund balance was because items have not been posted, and we're glad that someone is in there working on getting them posted. And I just hope that we can get that done very soon because, we don't know as taxpayers, where we stand with our fiscal house in town. Are we paying bills that we don't even have money for? So we hope that whether it takes hiring somebody to catch it up or whatever, do what needs to be done and make that a priority. I know there's lots of projects on the table that need to be taken care of, but let's please make that fiscal part the priority and see where we're at before we start funding other things. And as far as the $10,000 from the housing authority, it's good that they give it back, and it's tradition they give it back again. But if it means that this year they have to give it up to get the fiscal house in order, use it to do what we need to do, so we know how much money is in the bank, and that our bills are all paid and posted.
Thank you, Margaret. One moment, please. One thing I'd like to add to that is Jerry Williams here has worked very, very hard at working on the budget, upcoming budget, and also figuring out where the money is and trying to find a trail. He has really committed himself to doing that. We want to make sure that we have a very solid town and that we know how much money, we always know how much money we have. It's not a guessing game. We know how much money we have. We do the things we want to do. We prepare for the things we want to do. We can do great things as long as we expect great things, and we have plenty of people helping to do this. We need grant money, we need volunteers, we need all this, but it also takes a lot of money. It's like Jake said one day, there isn't anything that money can't fix. It's very true. Yes, Jimmy?
I wanted to ask Jerry just a quick question. When you had to dig around for all these expenditures, or the money to try and put together this 1.6 million, where it went, why? I mean, what you're saying is it wasn't posted, there was no accounting for it? Why did you have to do that?
I couldn't get a good answer, so I dug it out myself.
I mean, this is, as a business person, how does it get to this point?
Ginger, I'll be as honest as I can. I asked the question many, many times in the first 3 or 4 weeks, months, where the money went. And the answer I got was not to my satisfaction, and so I went through the record myself, went into the computer, and I found where these things had been posted, and that was my acknowledgement of where the money could have gone. Yes, somebody else could have gone through the records and probably could have come up with maybe better, maybe a different set, but they didn't. And so I didn't. So
It's like you can't make this stuff up.
So,
posted and printed every bill that had been paid into the general fund today. And then took the monies that was removed from other accounts also. And, from looking at what would have been printed, it would have been about 700 pages that would have been went through to look at that. So that would have been the only realistic way to do it.
That's where we got Excel and the software.
Okay, Jerry?
Since I was the one that did it, I did just that.
Yeah,
I ran through 700 pages.
Not a boy, Jared.
And I looked at the items that were major expenditures during that time period. And in fact, 6 months before the time period, because some of those expenditures were made in anticipation of receiving the money. When the money was received, the town had in its bank account about $60,000 in the general fund. At one day when I checked, and another day it had about 90. So in anticipation of getting the 1.5, whatever, these expenditures were made. And I'm not saying they're bad expenditures. It was probably a good expenditure.
that's not.
The problem that I had was that I couldn't find out where the money went. So this is the best shot that anybody made on coming up with where the money went. And I welcome anybody to come in, go through the records and read it. I'm not an accountant by any stretch of the imagination, but I can sit there and find out big expenditures and find out what I might have done if I had been in the same position. And I determined that there's a list here of what I would have done or what a logical person would have done with the money that had been come in at that point. And so,
Okay, Bob?
If there is always published a budget versus actual. So this was not budgeted. The $1.67 million was not a budgeted item. So budget versus actual had an increase over and above it of $1.67 million. So whether or not there was $60,000 or $90,000 in the bank, I'm not sure that that's relevant to the discussion. What I think Ginger's asking is that we had a budget for that year of about $1.12 million. We had an increase of $1.67 million. Trying to find $1.67 million, which is double what we had, seems to me should have jumped out somewhere. Why didn't it jump out?
well, I went into the budget balance at that time, which was between $1.60,000 and $90,000. So it increased the general fund balance by that much. Yes, there should have been a budget amendment made to add that to the budget if it were to be spent. I couldn't find the budget amendment that was added to put that in and move it over from the general account, bank account to the general account expenditure account. But the expenditure account had these expenditures in it. So it was expended.
So who was supposed to be keeping these
Well-
records before you all took over?
At that time, of course, Mr. Green was the administrator and Mrs. Rich was the bookkeeper or accountant, and she was later made on the 1st of December the administrator. And all of us have tried to find out where the 1.6 went.
Would she be legally liable to help Ms. Davis?
Well, I don't
Or
see
is
any.
she legally liable to help find this money? Is that a
I
legal
don't-
issue?
You cannot be legally, you're not liable as a government employee. Personally, you're not liable.
Okay.
I just felt like this was the most appropriate identification of where about $500,000 was spent.
Now, I appreciate what you've done, Jerry. I think it's commendable that you've had to wade through all that stuff. I'm just still upset that you all walked into a bee's nest and somebody had just whacked it with a stick.
Well, hopefully in a couple of days, if the state, they do have this year's audit in hand, and it's been sent back for review, and once the state stamps their approval on it, that will give us our last 3-year review audits. I hope to have some numbers from what it costs the town to operate broadband over the last 3 years. But at this point, because our audit is not finalized, I cannot give you those numbers, but hopefully within the next 2 weeks, I will be able to give some numbers as to where some of that money went.
I've never said that it was misspent. No, I don't.
No, but you haven't.
There's no appearance of misspending.
And I think it's incredible that you, at the time, having to take all this up, because it's been a job.
When you say Jerry's at the time, Jerry has, he's taking time out of his life, to just,
No,
every day.
that he had the energy and the time to do it. I could not do that. I'm not attacking Jerry. I'm
The
just
reason
saying
we wanted to
that
do this is because, you know, when we heard the money was coming back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, all indications were that that money would be put in a separate account and to be used as a capital improvement bank account. And so I think most of everybody in town thought that. And then when we arrived, it wasn't. It was put in the general account, general fund. What we're doing is we're opening a bank account for Beaver Creek watershed to be the pocket for future expenditures to be reprogrammed. So if we want a project, and it's not restricted, the money is not restricted to water and sewer, it's a non-restricted grant. According to the auditor and according to the lady from the finance office, it was an unrestricted grant. We didn't have to spend it on water and sewer, we could spend it any way we wanted to. And so it's going to be in an unrestricted capital improvement type bank account. And it'll sit there in a bank account. If we need $50,000 for a specific project, we take it out of that account and put it into the general fund, into the budget, by a budget amendment, and then spend against that line item in the budget.
And did we talk to Bill Reed about this problem?
I asked him before he left.
And he didn't have an answer. He couldn't tell you about where the money went or what was supposed to happen with the money?
If I had gotten an answer, I wouldn't have had to go through this.
Okay, Ray.
The numbers that Mr. Boyd pulled out there together, when he stated that in the 2012, 2013 budget, that the general fund only had $60,000. They were in actuality broke. They were making paper. So when this money arrived, Christmas,
And, you know, not to keep you on, but once we can give you some numbers pertaining to the broadband, I will tell you that I think y'all are going to be astonished at some of the operating costs of broadband over the last 3 years. And I will be glad, I know Stacy's called me a couple of times, but, this year's audit is rubber stamped by the state, and I can actually use those numbers. It's not public record, but once it's rubber stamped, I promise you I will release those figures to the taxpayers of the town of Bainbridge.
Okay, we have, I'm sorry, but we have 2 items that were under the new business part, and on some agendas that were left off, and some they weren't involved.
We have to,
Item
D.
D, which is one that Gary.
Well, I had that when you go with
Well, we can't vote. We have 2 options.
You don't know what I've been through in the last week.
We have a resolution.
All right, item E is a resolution. Jerry, would you like to?
It's a resolution in order to fill the paperwork gap for our filter project that we just requested a grant on the first of April. And basically, there's a bunch of whereases and whereases, and it says, therefore, it be resolved that the Board of Aldermen of the County of Andrews will arrange financing for all remaining costs of the project if approved for the state grant award. That's the big thing. We have to do the cost up front. If the applicant will adopt and place in effect ordering for the completion of the project, schedule fees and charges and other available funds to provide adequate funds for proper operation, maintenance, and administration system, and repayment of all principal and interest on the debt. So basically, it says we agree to include in the loan agreement provision authorizing the state treasurer for the failure of the town to to make scheduled repayment of the bond. And the applicant will provide efficient operation and maintenance of the project to completion. And I, Alderman, and authorized officials, successors of title, is hereby authorized to execute and file the application on behalf of the applicant, State of North Carolina. That's for the filter project. And also for part of the grant that we've been in for was for a study for the water treatment plant. The same resolution applies to that. And you're all welcome to come up and look through the resolution on the table instead of me reading. But basically, it has to be signed, has to be filed, and the person that processed this grant, which is McGill Associates, needs these back quickly signed. And that's why we had to stick it into the last meeting.
Now, this was a grant project, so this was a CDBG grant.
CDBG it's a free money grant, totally, because it's for the generator at the treatment plant and a replacement of the filter at the treatment plant and a total treatment plant study. It did not include the strainer.
Okay, you guys, Jake has a comment he'd like to make about it.
Yes, these are actually not the CDBG, which is low income. These are through Diener, and one, the study one, will study what we are discharging. Let me digress. I'm over collections. I get it to the sewer plant. I don't know how the thing works, but I do know about the stream. What is discharged into the stream to Valley River? This study will see what it will take to make our plant better and discharge less ambience. Is that what it is?
Antigen.
Yeah, that into the stream. Okay. Once we get this study, they can then determine what they need to do throughout the plant to make it filter better. The other one, and this is two different grants. The town may get both of them, and they may not get either one of them, or they may get one of them. The other one is to improve the trickle filter, is that correct? And to replace the generator that's down there that is insufficient, and I pity it, it's needed for a long duration. It was put in at 86, so it's over here, so hopefully we'll get these two, but I want to clarify.
Are these grants dependent on us not doing any work before the grant? Yeah, so that means we can't fix the trickler until we get the grant.
Can't do anything that we're applying for this grant. I mean, you can go on the other side and cut something that you're not applying for this grant for.
What returns on getting a grant?
It's all a grading period. We're not the only ones applying for this grant in the United States. And so it's all a grade, depending upon how your needs are. And the higher your needs, the more your points are, and the more the points, the more likely you are to get it. But it is a 100% grant.
We need to hand the river.
Well, they're on top of that.
Huh?
They're on top of that. They're the ones that found the grant for us to begin with.
All right, we're gonna move forward here.
We need to make a motion that we approve these resolutions.
We'll have a second.
that.
And if you want further discussion, we can talk about them, we can read them, whatever. Normally, when we go for a grant, we have to do a resolution. On CBDG, there are several public hearings that have to be made for our project. I'm not clear if these two have to be made. Probably if we get the money, we'll have to have public hearings about it.
How much is the money?
Well, I think one of them is close to 500,000 for the filter and the generator, and I think the study is probably 40 to 60.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second.
Those are 100% correct.
Yes.
I made the motion is to approve both of them.
Motion to approve both of them. Do we have a second to approve both of them? Ray Frazier seconds that. All in favor? Motion is carried. At this time, we need to read something to you and then go into executive session for a short period of time. Ray Frazier, will you read that?
Make a motion to go into executive session.
We got a second? Second motion.
C, I move that the Board of Aldermen of the Town of Andrews go into closed session, receive advice from M.L. Davis, Town of Andrews, advice from the purview of the attorney-client privilege, advice, general legal advice about legal issues or legal matters will not be advice or discussion pertaining to legal pending lawsuits.
Do I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Better be, and the last one. And personnel motion. Pursuant to the provisions of North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11C, I move that the Board of Aldermen of the Town of Andrews go into closed session for the purpose of considering personnel matters defined and allowed by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A6 and North Carolina General Statute 160A-116B.
Do we have a second?
I second.
In favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried.